What's going on, everybody? C4 here. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be breaking down my top 10 running backs for the 2021 NFL Draft. I've already broken down my top 10 quarterbacks. That turned into like a 45-minute video. That was more of a podcast. I'm going to dial it back here. That's just way too long, way too hard to digest. I'm going to keep the more in-depth stuff. That's all going to be just staying on my Patreon. These YouTube videos will be quick, concise player rankings, and more so I'll give you guys, kind of my idea and how I think about the player, but ultimately their pro comparison and what round I think they're going to be drafted. So yeah, we're going to look at the top 10 running backs in position. Obviously, I played running back at high school, so I usually have a pretty good track record in predicting running backs, at least the top end ones. The history speaks for itself. I've been doing this for almost goddamn 10 years here on YouTube. So before we get to that video, though, we do have something to take care of. I'd like to thank Tennis Clash for sponsoring today's video. Tennis Clash is a free mobile PvP tennis game that looks great and offers an easy-to-learn, fun playing experience. It combines live PvP matches with cool RPG elements that will sure to get you hooked. With more than 60 million downloads worldwide and a crazy high score in the App Store, there's no better time than now to download Tennis Clash on iOS and Android. To help you guys out, make sure when you download it, you get it from the links in the description box below, or you scan the QR code that you're seeing right now to get 200 gems and 500 gold to give you that overpowered start in Tennis Clash that you deserve. All right, let's find our first victim here. Now, the controls in Tennis Clash, very simplistic, very easy to get a hang of. The quicker you swipe on your phone screen, the harder you hit the ball, and let's be honest, we're all about building a powerhouse here when I'm making my guy. There's just too much to handle on these serves. You can touch anywhere on the court to move your player to try and rebound the ball and hit it back to your opponent. And obviously, like me, as you can see, there's no contest. Too much power. Download Tennis Clash now for free in the link in the description and get 200 gems and 500 gold for supporting my channel. At number 10, we're going with JAMAAL Jefferson, the running back from Oregon State, 5'9", 215 pounds. A man who, as a true freshman in the Pac-12, insane. It was one of the most impressive freshman running back seasons I've ever seen. He had like over 1,500 yards of scrimmage, 12 touchdowns, carried an Oregon State offense. 2019 had an injury, 2020 and very limited. They only played 6 games. He had almost 900 yards and 7 touchdowns. I mean, you see a guy that's a very solid athlete by all means. He's a type of player that, he's more so the tangibles, the technique side of things, than he is like a pure, I'm going to run just past everyone because I'm a better athlete style player. Still put up okay times at his pro day there. 4.55's not brutal, but you could just see with the shuttle of a 4.38, 3-cone was 8th percentile. Bench was, he's not a guy that's going to be a premier athlete, but he's just a damn good football player. And for me, I got a draft grade of a 4th, 5th round for JAMAAL Jefferson, and my pro comparison is DEVONTA FREEMAN. Running back 9, we're going with Javian Hawkins, 5'9", 195 pounds, out of Louisville. For the pros of him, speed and agility in spades. Now, not necessarily testing speed. I mean, it didn't test bad, but at Louisville's pro day, we got 36-inch vertical, 68th percentile, 4.46 in the 40. The shuttle and 3-cone weren't great. They weren't bad. They were just slightly above average, which was very surprising to me because he's so springy. He's such a springy player. And you look at his Louisville film, and I'm not really worried about any of those times. He's still one of those guys where you're always going to trust your gut with the tape and hope that the 40-yard dash maybe was a little bit of an off day. But for Hawkins here, man, really solid player. 2-year starter at Louisville last year in 2020 in only 8 games. This is a guy that had almost 1,000 yards from scrimmage and 8 total touchdowns. The negatives for him would be running back by committee ceiling, built like that, testing like that. I don't know if you're ever going to have an RB1. And the unproven hands. You see a guy 5'9", 195, you'd assume that he would have, a bunch of targets, a bunch of plays designed to get the ball to him in the passing game. But the reality is he only has 21 career receptions. So a little bit to worry there. But ultimately, I'm giving him a 4th round grade, and my pro comparison for him is Justice Hill of the Baltimore Ravens. This one kind of pains me, given the hype that I had for this player because he's Canadian. But at running back number 8, I'm going with Chuba Hubbard, 6 feet tall, 210 pounds, out of Oklahoma State. A player that unfortunately probably should have declared last season in Oklahoma State as a redshirt sophomore, so he'd been young, but still would have been eligible for the draft. He had almost 2,300 yards from scrimmage and 21 total touchdowns, and just showed, the positives there, man. The 2019 one-cut speed, a guy that all he has to do, just give him a crease, and he will take it to the house very, very consistently. And we didn't really see that in 2020, unfortunately. I mean, it's COVID times, things are weird. And ultimately, it didn't look brutal. In 7 games, he had almost 700 yards from scrimmage and 6 touchdowns. That's just not, the kind of season we thought that the guy that came 8th in the Heisman voting in 2019 would produce. The negatives for him, which you definitely kind of saw on full display here in 2020, doesn't necessarily create yards. I don't think he's a guy that's going to be able to play behind a bad offensive line. But if you're a team that has a committee and you have a stellar offensive line and a committed run approach, I think Chuba Hubbard's going to be really, really solid for you. Ultimately, I'm giving him a 4th round draft grade. I think there's definitely some value to be had there. And my pro comparison from him is Tevin Coleman. Running back number 6 on the list has probably one of my probably my 3rd favorite pro comparison out of all the running backs. Like in terms of that's 100% who that guy is. Jared Patterson, 5'9", 195 pounds. You may have remembered the game he had he had 400 yards against, was it Kent State? He had this game where he had Buffalo against Kent State. He had 36 attempts, 409 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So you probably have heard of him for that. But he should have been on your radar beforehand because he had 1,000 yards, 14 touchdowns as a true freshman for Buffalo. And then in 2019, 2,000 yards from scrimmage and 20 touchdowns. It is absolutely insane production. Now, there is something to be said that Buffalo is just a team that constantly has really good run. They're like Memphis. Buffalo and Memphis, it just feels like, they have 3 running backs that on any given game can go over 100 yards. I think behind Jared Patterson, it was Kevin Marks. I don't know if he's still there. I think he might have transferred. I don't know. But either way, for Jared Patterson, the vision is good. The elite production, he's basically unmatched from a game-to-game basis that is coming into this year's draft class. The negatives, obviously, is running back by committee. The straight line speed. Again, all of these little slideshows and stuff were written before any of these pro days started. But the speed there, man, it kind of tested out 4.54 at his pro day for a running back that's actually 5'7", 195 pounds. And that's always going to be slightly concerning. But Devin Singletary was a player that had a lot of production, elite production at Florida Atlantic. Didn't test particularly well at the combine. Fell a little bit, but since he's been in Buffalo, when healthy, you look for the Buffalo Bills right now, you're going to have Devin Singletary, you're going to have Zach Moss as a hell of a 1-2 punch for running back for the next 3-4 years. Devin Singletary is a beast, and that's what you get with Jared Patterson. Running back number 5, we're going with Michael Carter, 5'8", 200 pounds out of North Carolina. The tandem that he had with Javonte Williams in North Carolina was my favorite running back tandem. I can't even think back to the last one I enjoyed as much as they did last year. And it almost reminded me of Lendale White and Chris Johnson with the Tennessee Titans. But Michael Carter, really good football player. His explosiveness is very apparent anytime you watch him play. His receiving ability is impressive. 82 career receptions, over 600 yards, 6 touchdowns through the passing game. The negatives, running back by committee ceiling. You always look at a guy that's built like this with his skill set and you worry, are you ever going to be the guy? And there's, that's kind of going to push guys back because the running backs that get drafted further might not have the best receiving ability, might not be the best modern 2021 running back that can do it all, but if they have a higher ceiling to project as that could be our bell cow guy, they're always going to have a little bit more value, and that's the kind of worry with Michael Carter. I put contact balance in there. It's not that it's such a negative, but you always want to kind of nitpick when you could, and it doesn't help that he has Javonte Williams. That contrast when you watch Javonte Williams get a couple snaps with Michael Carter, it just didn't help his case a little bit. So that was a little bit of an unfair negative there. But for Michael Carter, I'm giving him a 3rd round grade. My pro comparison for him is Duke Johnson. And then Duke Johnson's been solid in the NFL, but Duke Johnson coming to Miami was very, very dangerous. A guy that probably should have had a better career than what he did. Maybe slightly underwhelming in that department, but I'm very excited for Michael Carter. I'm a big fan, and looking as a fan of a team that kind of is probably going to be in the market for receiving back, I'd love Michael Carter on the Philadelphia Eagles. Now we're getting into the top 4, really including Michael Carter. These top 5 running backs, I absolutely love. I cannot wait, regardless of where they go in the NFL. Even if they go to Dallas, I'm going to be pulling for them because they're all very exciting. It's a really good class. I don't think it's getting enough respect. But at running back 4, we're going Kenneth Gainwell from Memphis, 5'11", 190 pounds. This redshirt sophomore who can do it all. I gave him an Austin Eckler comp. I think he'll go 2nd, 3rd round, somewhere in that range. He just very low miles. Really, essentially a 1-year starter at Memphis, where in that 1 year, as a redshirt freshman, 200, oh my God. How many, 282 touches from the line of scrimmage, which is a massive workload for a freshman. So that shows football intelligence, being able to handle that amount of reps. 2,100 yards from scrimmage and 16 touchdowns. it's just absurd. So the negatives would be the one-year starter. Is that going to be consistent? Did he just have a once-in-a-lifetime top season? Obviously, with his size, pass protection, it's never going to be a plus. Always might be, I don't want to say committee back because Austin Ekeler can clearly show that he can be an every down back. But, there's some concern there about the pass protection for third down situations where you're not going to be using them as a receiver. But I really do like that comp. Austin Ekeler, Gainwell will be able to do everything that an offense requires him because, I didn't even make note that a part of those yards for scrimmage, dude had 51 receptions for 600 yards. So I just think you're getting a really good value player. If you've seen, again, I don't want to make all these videos about me being an Eagles fan, but for certain players that I've looked into, Kenneth Gainwell is a guy that if you look at any of my mock drafts, if he's still there in that third round, it's a prime pick for me on any of the mock draft sites when I'm drafting for the Eagles because I do think he is going to be a very productive player as a rookie and a very productive player long-term with his skill set. I wanted to squeeze in Kenneth Gainwell, ran low 4.4s at his pro day, so the speed was also there. Moving on to running back number 3, I'm going Javonte Williams from North Carolina, 5'10", 220 pounds, a beast. Contact balance is the number one buzzword you will see if you look at any of the mock draft sites or draft ranking sites, and it's literally absurd. He was my favorite running back to watch last year in college football. 3-down running back with, he's not obviously a prolific receiver, but 25 catches last season for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. To go along with 19 rushing touchdowns and over 1,000 yards. Guy's an absolute beast. Pass protection, inconsistent. I wasn't overly impressed with either of the pass pros for the North Carolina running backs. More so with Williams as the bigger back. You thought he'd be a little more comfortable. Plus, you had the one-year wonder per se. He had 1,100 yards in 2019 as well. But, this year was when he was just dominant. He literally looked like he took his game to another level. So there's always that slight concern. But again, that's more so nitpicking at a player I really like to have some potential negatives. Ultimately, I'm giving a second-round grade. In my pro comparison, I'm saying James Robinson that we saw last year with the Jags. Sometimes I give a pro comp. It's a player coming out of college. Robinson was a UDFA, and Javonte Williams is going to be, probably a top 50, top 60 pick. But you look at what James Robinson did last year for the Jacksonville Jaguars. James Robinson would have went in the second round if teams knew he was going to be that good. And that is a very similar stylistically to Javonte Williams, where they just good luck tackling. They pretty much make the first guy miss every single time. It's not because they're elusive. It's just because they're built like a brick shithouse. For Javonte Williams at his pro day, he didn't test bad at all. 123-inch broad, 22 reps on the bench press, which is 76th percentile. 4.55 in the 40, which is about expected. 4.09 in the short shuttle, which is in the 91st percentile. Very impressive and definitely has solidified his status, in my opinion, as a second-round pick. Running back 2 is going to be Travis Etienne from Clemson, 5'10", 210 pounds, 2-time Heisman finalist, 7th in 2018, 9th in 2019, and one of the most productive running backs we've seen in college football with over 6,100 yards from scrimmage and 78 touchdowns in 4 years at Clemson. When you look at Travis Etienne, he's fast. He can scoot. His speed and home run ability is the best in this year's draft class. A 4.41 at his pro day, 128-inch broad, which is the 93rd percentile. He was, that's if you need that, and a lot of teams, they don't have prolifically fast running backs. I think someone like Travis Etienne is going to be very interesting. He'll definitely potentially sneak into the first round. Negatives, I think he just has the number of touches, man. He has almost 700. I said 600 plus, but he's almost 700 career rushing attempts. That is a lot of miles on the tread of Travis Etienne's wheels there, which is always a concern. I don't really know, it's just one of those things where a lot of times when a running back busts in the NFL, it's because he had a big name in college. And a lot of times, and it's not always first round running backs, but just generally think of the running backs that go in the first, day 1 and day 2, right? You have these really well-known running backs from college football. And the reason why they're well-known, in a lot of cases, it's just like these are guys that just put up absurd numbers with their teams. When you put up absurd numbers, a lot of times you are absolutely toting that rock, 200 plus times a season. And that's a concern for me anyways, especially with the limited shelf life that running backs have. The less touches, the better, I will say. That's more so what I'm highlighting there. But ultimately, I'm giving a first, second round grade. In my pro comparison from him, JAMAAL Charles. Actually, I'm surprised I haven't seen that comp being given out to ETN. He's a guy that has over 100 receptions in his career. You can catch the ball in the backfield, has prolific speed, and like JAMAAL Charles, I don't know. I like it. I really do like that comparison. And ETN is going to be, at the very least, super fun to use in Madden 22. And my running back number 1 is Najee Harris, 6'2", 230 pounds, out of Alabama. I love the idea, and I'm just going to convince myself of this, that Najee Harris returned to Alabama in 2020 because so many people were like, man, he's not really a receiver. He only had 1 year at Alabama in 2019 where he had 7 receiving touchdowns on 300 yards and 27 catches. And he's like, oh, okay, I'm going to go prove that I can be an even better receiving back and prove that I should be RB1 in that 2021 NFL draft. And last year at Alabama, 43 receptions, over 400 yards, 4 touchdowns to give him almost 1,900 yards from scrimmage and 30 total touchdowns. I mean, he's an elite power back, a guy that can run through you, he can jump over you, he gives you 3-down ability. The straight line speed might not be great. He didn't test, had some injuries. He's one of those guys, I don't care. I don't care what he ran in the 40 because he's gonna be a really special player. Over 600 carries, so if we're gonna use that negative for Travis Etienne, same can be said for Najee Harris. 638 attempts in 4 years at Alabama. But ultimately, for him, I'm giving him a first, second round. I don't have a true lock for the first round running back in this year's draft class, but I wouldn't be surprised if a team in the late 20s does pull the trigger. But my pro comp is Arian Foster. I think Arian Foster, underrated, man. People forget just how well balanced he was. You look at him, he was 225, 230 pounds. Usually you get pigeonholed as a receiving back at that point. And he was a guy that would consistently do it all for the Houston Texans. He would catch 30, 40, 50 balls a year. He'd be able to be very productive, be a power back. And I really do think stylistically that's what Harris is going to bring. I think athletically they're probably the same. Arian Foster at the combine ran a 4.68. Wouldn't be surprised if Harris was, in the 4.6s. I mean, that didn't hurt in recent memory. Josh Jacobs, either way. He ran pretty slow at his pro days. He's been a very special player for the almost said Oakland Raiders, but the Las Vegas Raiders. But yeah, Arian Foster, Najee Harris, that's my final pro camp, and those are my top 10 running backs in the 2021 NFL Draft. So if you want to engage with me more about my draft picks in a more intimate setting and see all of my other rankings, check out my Patreon. Let me know in the comment section below, though. How do you guys feel about my rankings? Trey Sermon's not there. He was my number 11. I know he's a popular name that a lot of people may have in their top 10. Ramondre Stevenson's another one. Kylan Hill, Khalil Herbert, all those players. Nice running backs for sure, but just missed the cut. But that'll do it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching. As always, your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace